That was pretty good, I think.
I think that's going to be the take. The one that we recorded, I think that's the take.
Yeah. The one that was actually recorded sounds pretty good. Much better than the one we didn't.
That's how you know. Ladies and gentlemen, that's how you know it's time for Nerdy 430, the podcast where comedian Tim Keck and I talk about nerdy-ish things for 30-ish minutes. My name is Kevin Bauer, and I am thrilled because today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite movies of all time. That's right, it's Jaws. The reason we're talking about this is because Jaws is back in theaters. We were supposed to go see this movie in IMAX this past weekend. Tim, unfortunately, could not join us, but I don't want to rub it in, Tim. It was a really great time.
I'm devastated. I'm devastated I couldn't go. IMAX, the biggest IMAX in the country, is in New York City. They were playing Jaws, and I had to miss it for unforeseen circumstances. But, you know, I'm incredibly jealous. Jaws is an underratedly beautiful movie to look at and to view. I think people are so focused on how bad the shark looks in a lot of scenes that they don't realize that it's like on the fucking ocean. Like this isn't like a water. What do they call it? I want to call it a water stage. I don't know if that's what you call it. Yeah. There's like,
I believe the term is aqua set.
An aqua set, yes, like an aqua palace, if you will, an aquatic center where you could maybe go swimming in like a big tank. You know, like Titanic. There's all that footage of like them hanging onto the board, and then like whoever directed that is just like standing there like outside the pool watching them do this. But Jaws is like out in the ocean, in the elements. It's beautiful. It makes me long for the sea. It's like incredible to see. And I'm so jealous I didn't get to see it wide. I watched it again on my, modest size television and enjoyed it thoroughly. Kevin, is this like the best movie of all time?
It might be. This is solidly in my top, definitely my top 5, maybe my top 3 movies of all time. It's one of the movies I've seen the most. I was saying one of the reasons I was excited to see this in theaters is because every summer I watch this a couple times for, I think it's been at least 10 years. And this was the first summer where I haven't watched Jaws. I've just not found the time for it this summer. And then to be able to close out the summer on Labor Day by seeing it was just what a lovely experience. I think it's interesting that you said it's an underratedly beautiful movie, though, because I think if there's one word I would never use to describe Jaws, it's underrated. I think that's like saying, oh, my God, have you heard of the Beatles?
I guess so. No joke. I was at a restaurant the other day, and these kids who were very like punked out, when I'm like gelled hair.
Please describe them.
Eyeliner.
Gelled hair.
Okay. Chains of some kind, like a real throwback. I was kind of like, whoa, you guys still do this? Like it took me back to high school. And one of them, no joke, said to the other, call me crazy, but I don't like the Beatles. Like they said it God. Like I actually am not into the Beatles, and they're talking about like Led Zeppelin and shit. I'm just like, you guys are fucking awful. Like this is a fun little phase. I hope you don't make too many permanent choices right now, because you're going to regret a lot of what this is going on right now. Critiquing the Beatles like they're a real band like today doesn't make any sense at all. It's like they were edgy as hell for the context, Back then, you were edgy if you showed a little ankle and you gyrated a little bit. They're shooting Elvis from the waist up, and nowadays there's music videos where like everyone's ass naked fucking each other. I don't know what's true. I mean, I haven't seen a music video in forever. I'm just saying things now. Jaws, let's get back to that. It's I don't think people discuss Jaws as like a beautiful film all the time. Like, I don't think the actual visuals of it on the ocean, I think, are so stunning. Mm-hmm. And when I hear people talk about Jaws, I don't necessarily hear them mention that the way maybe they should. Like, it's my go-to TV test movie, right? You get a new TV, you want to see if the TV's good. You just skip to that second half of Jaws when they're on the boat. You want to see some beautiful sunsets, some beautiful water. It's all there for you, man. It's great. I just don't think that aspect of it's neglected.
Oh my God. And I mean, what a great contrast too between how horrific the scenes of the brutality of nature are with the beauty of the surroundings. I was thinking about it while I was watching it this time around. I think maybe my favorite scene in the movie is the shark attack on the beach where Alex Kittner gets eaten, which is also probably the hardest scene to watch in the movie. Like that's a difficult scene. I have a lot of trouble with his mom coming in. She reminds me of my mom. It just hurts. It just hurts me to watch it. The dog gets eaten, but it's such a beautiful, colorful scene. It is a beautiful day at the ocean that day. And I mean that contrast between the beauty of nature and the horror of nature is just something else. It's so well done.
There's another contrast that I wanted to talk to you about as well that really stood out to me this time watching it. I had two takeaways I'm realizing now that I was thinking about this time in a different way. One is I think the acting in this movie is really, really good. Mm-hmm. And it's really grounded and genuine and awesome. Like it's just very realistic. Like it's not stilted. It's Brody is like he's like rubbing his forehead. He's touching his glasses. Quinn's telling a monologue. He's like taking off his hat. Like everything they're doing feels very organic. But then you contrast that with like Spielberg's like very structured and like blocked and staged shots. Like the way he shoots things is so, I'm trying to find the right word for it, but it's like so specific and it's so structured and it's so organized while the actors are doing like a very organic thing. There was like the moment that stood out to me was when Brody's like on the boat for the first time and he's like going to go shut down the beach. And then the mayor drives the car on and then the mayor gets out with like the doctor and like, I guess the newspaper guy. And then the four of them have a conversation. And then the mayor's like, come over here. And he grabs him and like they step forward again. And now the newspaper guy says something and Brody responds. And now then the mayor grabs him, pulls him forward. It's like they keep like moving forward in the frame while other people kind of drop. Like it's all just so like his vision is so perfect, whereas the acting comes across imperfectly, if that makes sense. Am I describing this in a right way? But
like imperfect in a very realistic human way.
The acting is realistic and grounded and would crush in a film today. But they don't shoot films the way they shot this one anymore.
No,
or not to the same extent.
Well, that's something that you brought up that was interesting too, is judging the Beatles by modern standards. I think one of the cool things about Jaws is that it really holds up by modern standards. I mean, this is still one hell of a movie and it's like 50 years later. The specific scene you're mentioning, this was awesome. I had never heard this about the scene before, but Spencer pointed it out. Shout out to Spencer Pazer, friend of the show. He was saying how they studied that scene in film school. And one of the things about it is when the car drives on to the boat and the guys get out, they keep paring down the number of people that are in the shot. So it starts with the four guys in the car, and then we go down to three, and then we go down to two, and it's just Brody and the mayor talking. And just the way that tightens in on the conversation brings us into those characters. It's incredible. There are also so many awesome shots that do so much to build the world where the camera will pan. So you would get what effectively would normally be two separate shots of this happened on the boat for sure. Like Hooper and Brody both on the boat. It would pan from one to the other. And there's something where, you know, timing wise, I don't even think it would be that different if it was a hard cut. But there's something about doing it as a pan that really works and makes you feel like you are in that world. And Jaws is one of those movies that has a super defined world. Like, it's a movie that I can put on. And one of the reasons I come back to it so much is it does feel like a world that I want to set foot into.
Yes, I think, to touch on that, the car shot, it's funny to me because it's so inorganic the way that happens, but the acting is very organic. I guess that's the word. One is the framing and the blocking is very inorganic, but then the acting is so organic. And to the boat thing, I think there were all these like incredible happy accidents during Jaws. I mean, it's kind of like a legendary production and all of that. The shark was a nightmare, so you don't see it. So they do like the Hitchcock reveal that's become iconic. Like there's so many iconic elements of this that were kind of happy accidents. I think one of them was that Spielberg wanted to like nail down the cameras onto the boat, and he got pushback from the camera crew saying you can't plant the camera on the boat because the boat will rock and the shot will rock and everyone will get seasick watching this movie. So they did a lot of handheld things, which then led to them doing the swivel, which then builds out the world of the boat in an incredible way. It really is like two separate movies. Like the first half is in the town and it's shot in a much more structured way with these kinds of shots that we're talking about. And then you get on the boat and it's like a whole different movie where it's shot kind of in a different way. And it's a different tone and story. It's great. It's so cool.
Oh my God. It's so cool. And how it brings you into the vulnerability of being on the boat where you're surrounded by this uncertainty, especially because Brody's afraid of the water. So I remember in the director's commentary for Infinity War, which I highly recommend watching. If you're a fan of the show, you are probably a fan of Infinity War. Go watch the director's commentary. It's worth it. The Russo brothers talked about shooting scenes for the Guardians of the Galaxy because everything else that they had shot in their filmmaking career so far was like pretty grounded. Like they did the paintball episode of Community, but like still pretty based in reality. So for Guardians of the Galaxy, as a means of making sure that they could ground out how fantastic all the alien elements were, they shot those sections on handheld because their feeling was that the like natural motion of a handheld camera makes you feel like you are more physically in that world, which makes everything else feel more realistic. So all the things that are just shot on Earth are shot static, but all the stuff with the Guardians in space are handheld. Thought that was awesome. I think it works in the same way here with Jaws, where like putting you on that boat with them, it makes the experience so much scarier.
That's an incredible point, and I buy it. It's so much more. It's so much less picturesque than like the small town they're in before, and so much less structured, and just seems more fluid and dangerous. The boat is a legit scary place, and it becomes like a horror movie in the second half. It's crazy. One of the things that stood out to me this time, I was thinking about Chief Brody. And I think in the past, I've kind of always thought of Chief Brody as like kind of a wuss and like just kind of a wimp and like a coward, because I always, looking back on the movie, think about how scared he is to be on the boat. But now watching this time, I was really just like, this is just like such a manly movie. It's like just men being men in a way that like I would aspire to as someone who, you know, drinks an iced coffee and like goes for walks and, you know, brings an umbrella when it rains. It's just like three examples.
City hands, Tim.
Yeah, but it's three examples of like masculinity and like such a traditional archetype. And one is like Quinn, who's like, you know, drinking and out at sea and just like passionate about all this stuff. And even the rich city boy he works the boat. He goes in the water. He's like facing his fears. And then Chief Brody, I mean, I remember in they have the scene where they compare scars and then he lifts up like his shirt and it's like an appendix scar or something like that, which is so funny. But all of that kind of made me think that he is also like kind of just like a wimp and just along for the ride, and that him beating the shark is him becoming a man. And now watching it, I'm like, he's kind of always been the same guy. It's really just a fish out of water. Like he is an assertive, you know, man at the beginning of the movie. Then he leaves his element. He enters a domain in which he does not feel comfortable at all. And then by the end, he is hanging off a mast, taking a shot at a shark with a tank hanging out of his mouth. So like he takes a weird dip and he enters like this unknown and he returns, but he's still kind of like a badass the whole time. Do you feel that at all? Am I hitting something? Like he was a cop.
I think you're definitely.
And then he comes
something.
in. He's bossing people around. He's assertive. We have to shut down the beach. They're like, we don't want to do that. He he convinces the mayor to do all of this stuff. He is very assertive. He like cares about people. He's passionate. It's just the second he gets in the water, he's like, I don't know anything about this. All of a sudden I'm chumming on the boat. Like he's the low man on the totem pole, but he is still, a guy the whole time. I don't know.
I think that's his hero's journey, right? That's his Harmon story circle. That's, it starts off and he's a fish out of water the whole time. But for the first half of his journey, he's trying to change Amity to fit what he wants. And then he realizes he has to change what he wants to fit Amity. So like he knows that a change is required, but he hasn't found that compromise yet. Because at first, exactly like you said, he's this big city cop. They're coming to him. They're like, you don't know this town. Like, you don't understand this. You don't shut down the beach. It's about to be the 4th of July. And then by the end of it, he realizes like the only way that he can save this town is if he personally puts himself on the line to go take the shark out. And like, it's so funny you describe him as kind of a wuss because Brody's always been one of my absolute favorite film protagonists. There's just something about him. I don't know if it's the idea of like, this guy who I think it's the fact that he has to face his fears in such a way, like his willingness to go and face this shark in the open water, even though he's terrified of water, is a very cool thing to do. And I like the idea that it's kind of like he didn't have to get on that boat. Like he's forced into it by way of like he needed to take action. He needed to hire Quint, but he personally didn't necessarily need to get on that boat. One of the big choices that he makes is getting on that boat. And that's such a cool character moment. And I feel like that's where he starts changing himself to fit Amity. Sorry.
Oh, no, I think that's interesting. I think that's a great point. I don't think that he is a wuss the whole time. I think it's much more complicated than that. Like you were saying, like he changes for the town. And I'm trying to think of what the equivalent of, if he's like a New York cop, there must be some equivalent of getting on the boat that he did in New York. Like, I don't know what that is, like responding to a call, going above and beyond. But he strikes me more as the kind of guy who gets on the boat in New York, in the New York context, metaphorically. He's getting on that metaphorical boat in the environment that he's comfortable in. And so it's like, it is a character. It's like him getting on the boat is a choice, but it's also, I feel like, kind of who he is.
Sure.
I don't know. It just seems very complicated. It seems much more complicated. It's such a good like hero's journey, but it seems like so much more complicated than just guy was a wuss and then became a man on a boat, which I think I've kind of brushed it off as in the past,
Oh man, that's the most Floridian thing that you've ever said is like, look at this wuss won't even get on a boat. I'm also, what else? I'm wondering if there's a connection here. Look, we're not unique in liking Jaws, but I'm wondering if one of the reasons that we both connect to it is because we both grew up on the water. You, the actual ocean, me, a very wussy lake. That is kind of an interesting fact that I just discovered. I also, on the note of his character change throughout the movie, I wanted to loop this back to our conversation about Nope that we had last month, because we brought up Jaws, and I mean, everybody was bringing up Jaws while talking about Nope. And one of our big things was that we couldn't necessarily pin down exactly what Daniel Kaluuya's character arc was supposed to have been in the movie. So I was wondering if, having watched Jaws, if that brought anything about Nope back up for you, or made you view anything about Nope in any kind of a different way.
I honestly haven't thought about Nope at all. Which is maybe a bigger indictment to that than anything, is I haven't spared a second thinking about Nope. I just really haven't thought about it at all, other than the fact that he's not necessarily wearing a cowboy hat in the poster. Other than that, I've really given Nope no thought. I think pretty poorly tried to explain how complicated I found Chief Brody's arc during Jaws, and I'm still grasping at what Daniel Kaluuya's would be. I just don't. see it as complicated on a personal level. I think there's a deeper meaning of like your ancestors and living up to expectations and things like that. That being said, I think it somehow lacks the complexity of Chief Brody's internal struggle with this, which is why Jaws is the standard, man. It's so good. It's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, damn.
Should we do some beefs and thieves,
not
Kevin?
to go any further. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting. Do you have any beefs?
Do I have any beefs? I don't know. I don't know if I have any beefs. I can't really think of any. I'm shocked at how fast this movie is. This is a quick movie. I mean, it's 2 hours, but it moves really fast and goes at like a pretty good clip, and they're cutting between stuff and the dialogue's good. And yet they still have time for moments where Brody's just making faces with his son. So I don't know how they pull it all off. Honestly, it's so quick. I mean, I guess some of the beefs would be like the shark. I don't think has aged as gracefully as the rest of the film has. There's that scene where the shark is eating Quinn, where I feel like, you know, first time you're watching it, you're just in shock of how like gruesome it is, and you're focused on Quinn. But on a few rewatches, you're like, this machete is just sticking out of like a plastic sheath that they've built into the shark. It's just it's a clumsy paper mache thing that they've created, and the acting is awesome. I mean, he's milking the shit out of it, but the shark looks kind of like shit. It looks kind of like shit. So that's probably the biggest beef in this movie. I don't know. You got anything else? You have a bad word to say about it, Kevin?
The only thing that I was wondering about this time around was the scene where they are singing Show Me the Way to Go Home, which the theater did not sing along. And I'm so disappointed the theater didn't sing along, because I wanted to sing along, but I didn't want to start the sing along.
Sucks.
Whole thing sucks. The scene where they're singing that and Hooper's thumping on the table, and then we start seeing like the wood buckling in from the shark like attacking the boat. The only thing I kept thinking is, mechanically, how is this happening? Like the shark is just backing up and then just ramming forward like very sharply, very quickly. It just feels like something that like a fish. It's hard to believe a fish doing that, like ramming forward with its nose. Now, I'm no shark expert. Maybe we should get a shark expert on the show. We should do an entire episode for like a mailbag where we just try to bring up some of our past beefs and talk to experts in those fields to see if it's plausible. But I just can't picture a fish laterally slamming into a boat that strongly. I don't know.
I happen to be a shark expert, and I can all but guarantee that that's not possible. I feel like there's no way it happens. There's no way. Also, what are the chances? I get it if like you're in a cage, right? And you're like cage diving, and they can see, they have like the visual and the electrical stimulation of a living creature being in the water with them.
Yeah.
But the idea of a shark attacking somebody who is in a boat, in like the inside of the boat, is crazy. It's insane. It doesn't make any sense. And I was looking at some other things. I mean, Mythbusters did an episode on this because I wanted to see how big the biggest shark actually was, and like compare that to Jaws.
Oh, awesome.
So the biggest so Jaws is 25 feet long. Bruce, 25 feet long. Quinn says 3 tons. I found online it would actually be closer to 4.5 tons if it was actually 25 feet long. The largest great white shark caught or seen on record is about 20 feet long. So this is a good human being sized bigger than any other shark that's been found. That being said, then I was also like, can a shark pull these barrels under? And it sounds like, to get to your mechanical thing, a shark could generate sufficient force to pull the barrels under. But then that would just show that the shark is just swimming straight down the whole time. The second the shark goes horizontal, it's getting flung up in the air because it's not generating any downward force to fight these barrels. So some of the mechanics in this are a little crazy. I mean, I guess I don't care enough to be nitpicking Jaws about the shark mechanics. It's just fun to talk about, and then there's the famous one that like, a scuba tank wouldn't actually explode, which is like a little devastating to learn. But
I didn't know that.
Still, you didn't know that. So if you puncture a tank, it'll fly around because compressed air is coming out, but there isn't necessarily a flammable component to it, so it wouldn't cause just a massive explosion. So there's a ton of holes in this if you want to pick them.
Oh, man.
I'm not even looking to do that, to be honest. It's like saying, wow, Vin Diesel actually isn't a good driver. It's like, why would we do this to ourselves? Why don't we just go along with it? Enjoy the ride. Oh, it doesn't make sense that a lightsaber only shoots out of this thing one way. Like, just go with it. It's all cool. It's fine. It's a giant shark. There's no way it's pulling down 3 barrels. Then it pulls down 3 barrels. Let's go. Let's go. Not with 3 barrels on him. That's my very bad Quint.
I knew it was Quint. I thought it was great.
Everybody knows it's Quint, but that doesn't mean it's a good one.
Hey, all you got to do is clear that bar, man.
It's a small bar.
I got some thieves to drop.
Let's drop some thieves.
One of my first ones, you just mentioned Quint. I didn't realize before. I feel like I noticed so many more things this time around watching this movie. I didn't realize the extent to which Quint just kind of like drifts through the background between when he's introduced and when they actually officially hire him. So like there's that scene where they think they caught the shark and we just see Quint coming and shaking his head at those idiots because he knows that's not the shark. Like he's there and he's waiting and he knows that eventually they're going to have to come to him. And then that scene where he's making his demands, amazing. Like he knows that he has this town over a barrel and he's going to get whatever the fuck he wants out of this town to go kill that shark.
That's awesome. That's one of my favorite scenes too. Maybe my thief, Kevin. A little bit of Countdown County / Brevard County / my hometown trivia. Rumored, my old English teacher used to say this all the time. The shark that they catch, where they say the bite radius of the shark doesn't match the bite radius of the victim, which is one of my favorite scenes and lines from the movie.
Oh,
that
what?
Shark caught in my hometown. So actually caught. Apparently it's a real shark. They caught it off the Cocoa Beach Pier, I think, or somewhere in Cocoa Beach. So I always get excited when I see it. I was watching it this time. I'm like, this doesn't look that real. Like I could totally believe the shark's fake. But apparently, rumor has it, caught off in Cocoa Beach in Florida. So I'm always excited about that. The bite radius in the shark does not match the bite radius of the victim. One of my favorite lines, him measuring the mouth, him talking to the guy, saying this is like a great white. And the guy goes, what? It's just everything about it. Chief Brody, like getting in the photo with them taking the picture. It's so then the mayor pulling them aside. I'm not going to let that damn Kittner boy
spill out all over the dock.
We do some autopsy on a fish. Like the mayor is throwing 99 miles per hour in every scene he's in. The mayor is outstanding.
Dude, he really is. Here's another thief. The fact that they altered the mayor's backstory. So I can't remember if this is from the first draft of the screenplay or from the book that the movie was adapted from, or both. But apparently the original backstory for why the mayor wanted to keep the beach open is because he owed money to the mob and the mob was leaning on him for this money. That is so much weaker than it being an internal personal conviction that he believes this beach in Amity needs to stay open. I mean, holy shit, it's so much stronger to have that choice being made by the mayor himself. Because then when we see how shaken he is after the attack, when the shark is in the waiting pool or something, I forget what they call it right now.
Lake or whatever.
The wharf.
The pond.
Something. Yeah, the pond.
The pond for old ladies.
When he's shaking in the hospital and he's saying, my kids were on that beach too. I mean, like, if that is coming from externally, then he is not really at fault for that. It's like, I can't believe the mob is making me do this when my kids' lives are on the line. But when that conflict is coming from inside of him and he's got to reckon with the fact that he almost got his own kids killed based on his own convictions. Ooh, that's tasty. I like that.
I think, yeah, I agree with you 100%. The mob ties unnecessary. The mayor, at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, the middle of the day, and the end of the day, he's a politician. And the only thing that he cares about is money, having enough dollars to rub together. So everyone in town is like, this is how we make all of our money. He answers to them. He wants to get reelected because, you know, mayor on the resume does you no good unless you're running for mayor again. So he doesn't know what his career aspirations are after this. Maybe he could, you know, give speeches somewhere like a university as like a local celebrity. I don't know, do a used car commercial. I don't know. I don't know what happens to a mayor once they're no longer the mayor. I think a mayor is the kind of thing that you just, like the Supreme Court, you're just elected and then you're just the mayor in perpetuity forever. Damn the consequences.
Yeah.
So he just cares about the money. They need the money. That's all he's thinking about. He's being, you know, kind of the corrupt villain, I guess, of the story, the antagonist. And to see him turn and change his mind is incredibly powerful. And then we just never see that character again, which is so funny to me. It may be the funniest part of the whole movie is like the first hour you spend all this time building up these characters in this town and like backstory and like seeing all these people and the townsfolk. And then it's like, fuck that. This is about three bros on a boat. And they just go out there and they're just broing down and they're fighting a shark and it's awesome. And it's cool. The shark's eating the boat. They don't even, nobody else dies. Like it's just the three of them for the entire half of the movie. The shark isn't killing anybody else. It's not tearing anybody. It's doing very little other than like antagonizing them. And it's still so compelling, so incredible. Man, I love this movie. Someday I'll see it in IMAX and my life will be complete.
Next year, man. We're going back next year.
Next year.
The only last thing that I wanted to drop for Thieves is that scene with Brody and his son at the dinner table when he's thinking things over. When I first started watching this movie, that was the throwaway scene for me. That was something where it's like, okay, we're watching this. Every time I watch it, the older I get, the more that sticks with me. And this past Monday in theaters, it almost brought me to tears. Like that scene is so powerful in such a quiet way. And I think that's one of those big things that Spielberg brings to a movie is he knows how to do those big action scenes and those really big, tense, like Hitchcockian scenes where we don't know where the shark is. We see like the camera going beneath people's feet in the water. But then he also knows how to get really quiet and ground everything that's happening in real human emotion. And I mean, we both talked about how character is the most important thing for us in a movie and how we just want to make sure that the story arc at the end of the day is good. And there's no better way to do it than to take these quiet moments with your characters and make sure that we feel what they're feeling.
It's awesome. I agree. I love that scene. I've grown. I've matured as a human being and recognized that Brody is a complex human being. He is a good father. He is a good husband. He's good at his job. And then he ventures into the unknown for the good of the town and the people he loves, including that son who he's, imitating him from across the table. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful story, Kevin.
Oh, you know what, though? You said good at his job. That does make me think of my only beef.
Where's the beef?
Brody has the line, I'm chief of police. I can do whatever I want. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Nerdy for 30. Thank you so much for joining us. We've had a great time talking about this. I hope you've had a great time listening to us talk about it. If you have, go ahead, give us 5 stars wherever you're listening. It don't cost you nothing. Don't cost you a dang thing.
Yeah, you're right. I long for the days when I could hear a cop say, like tonight I'm not a cop and just go out and murder a bunch of bad guys and not feel like a twinge of not feel like kind of bad about society when it happens.
Dude, it's every movie in the fucking 80s. It's like 80s movies just set that pattern where it's like, well, they're a cop, so obviously they're a good guy. And sometimes we need to trust the person more than we trust the badge. Like, yeah, it's the worst possible moral to carry over into the 2020s. Yeah, it just seems like so much of that. I mean, there's like Lethal Weapon's one of my favorite movies of all time. I
think we'll revisit it on the podcast at some point.
We absolutely will.
There's just scenes where it's like, this guy sold some drugs. He deserves to die. And it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, I guess so. No trial. That's fine. I didn't realize I was watching Judge Dredd, where he takes the law into his hands. Judge, jury, and executioner. That's just every single cop in every movie ever. And Chief Brody. I mean, justice for Jaws. Where's the trial for him?
No.
You can't
Jaws
just go out there and
a
kill
lot of people.
He's an endangered species, and we were invading his territory.
Are great whites actually endangered?
Well, sharks are endangered because of fishing. They're it's not necessarily us, but other countries do a lot of, trolling, and they shark fin soup. That's a whole thing. They just take a shark, cut off his fins, and then throw him back in the ocean for him to slowly die on his own.
Like a sad
Some
torpedo.
gruesome stuff. We don't treat him great. But then again, they do attack like 6 people every year, so fuck them, right?
Yeah, fuck sharks. Go Jaws. Thanks so much for listening, everybody.
Go Jaws.
If you want to send us an email, it's nerdy430@gmail.com. Other than that, we're going to be back next week talking about something. So see you then. Bye, everybody.
We'll figure it out. We'll get our shit together.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Bye.
Bye.
Also, we're on YouTube. Like the number of shark attacks is actually like, it's like never in the teens.
No.
It's low.
Except in Australia. Australia has a lot of them. Chris Hemsworth has a documentary on National Geographic about it.
But even a lot, it's like 10 a year. That's like the entire world gets like 10 shark attacks a year. It's always a shockingly low amount. My hometown is like the shark attack capital, I think. Next to, and they get like 3, maybe.
Damn.
It's shocking how infrequently sharks attack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the premise of it is so scary, though. Like the idea is so scary. It's like an air conditioner falling on you in New York City. Just the idea that it can happen scares the shit out of you.
More people die from falling air conditioners. That's like a stat.
Is that? Oh, man. Dude, where's that horror movie?
More people are killed by toilets than sharks. Look it up.
Killed by toilets?